Today we've got a special video for you. This is our first video podcast together. And honestly, it was a bit of a learning curve for me. One of the cameras pooped out midway. So you may or may not notice there's 3 camera angles in the beginning and then it switches to 2. But it's a great conversation. Still got plenty of angles. And I look forward to doing a lot more of these video podcasts with my partner, Fēnix.
Enjoy.
If you're deeply committed to your relationship, but keep getting pulled into the same reactive loops that feel disconnecting, you're not alone. I'm Forrest Williams, certified relationship coach, and I guide devoted couples to untangle the unconscious dynamics that get in the way of intimacy and quietly erode connection over time. Here, we explore conscious relating as a spiritual practice, where your relationship becomes a sanctuary for healing, growth, and a steady source of joy instead of struggle. So you and I were going for a walk today. And like every walk we ever have, I say, this could be a podcast. Which is every day. But what were we talking about? Oh, I said, did I say you're such a good ally? Is that what I said? That sounds so awkward.
I think you might have said it in jest, but I think you were trying to give me like a compliment or give me the information that you feel very supported by me.
I know what happened. It's like as we were walking out the door, you're just being so validating and sweet and very expressive with how much you appreciate who I am. And you get very specific about it, which I fucking love. It's like dream partnership for me. You just like, I'm like showering in that stuff all day. You just throw it at me.
I love specific validation words of affirmation.
Yeah. And then you called me a boy, which I thought was kind of funny. So I was like, I'm a man. But but it landed actually as endearing when you said it. I don't remember the exact thing you said, but you said like, I love the kind of boy you are or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Something sweet in that. And I was like, oh, babe. And then I was like, damn, you're so good at affirming me without like trying, because I've been in many situations in a lot of client sessions where the clients are like very overtly trying to be a good ally. And it comes off as very awkward and uncomfortable, where they're going out of their way to be like making comments about my appearance or my gender or my masculinity. And it just feels like awkward and not authentic. And I don't know, it makes me feel trans. I feel like othered in that way, where I'm like, oh, kill the vibe, But you have this way of, like, you're not trying to do that, and it shows because it just flows and it feels authentic and it feels connecting.
Right, which is then what we talked about on the walk, where I said like, isn't that interesting, because I'm not trying to be a good ally, right? Which... we can talk about, we both have our own histories and experiences of maybe trying to be good allies in certain ways, but I'm not trying to be a good ally. I'm just being like, I'm just loving you human to human, right? Like I'm just being a good human, or like just, loving you as your partner, not through this like perspective of allyship. And then that made me start talking about and thinking about how performative social justice culture, it's so dehumanizing, and how it carries this energy of dehumanization into it, even though it's responding to dehumanization, and how there can still be dehumanization in the culture that plays out within like social justice. And really maybe what we need was what I was saying was like maybe just to like humanize everything, right? Like stop trying to be an ally, just like be a human, like with another human.
Yeah. I can't help but laugh because it sounds so basic and obvious, but it's true. And I think it's when you take the ego out of it, when you say, oh my God, am I being a good enough ally? Do I get an ally cookie? Where it's like all about you. That's when things start to get really weird. And I've been on the other side of the equation trying to be like a good white ally, and I'm getting a little weird. It's like, oh, I think I'm overgiving in this dynamic, actually. Like, this doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, because I have 100% been the like trying to be a good ally girl non-binary person, like all of it.
Poster child.
Yeah, poster child. But I didn't necessarily know that I was doing that when I was doing it. Like I was just caught up, like 7 years ago at this point, very caught up in the culture of wanting to be, I don't know. Well, first I would say I had values that were like humanitarian, right? Like I had values that are still my values of like, valuing kindness and like wanting everyone to be treated, equally or like with dignity. And so I had those values, and then I was like situated within the social justice kind of activist culture of people who have those values, but maybe don't necessarily always embody them in the way that they behave or the way that they act or the strategies that are used for social justice. And so I was situated in the kind of like, I feel like what we now see is the like mainstream social justice culture. And I still had a lot of like wounding that I was working out within myself around accepting myself for who I was. And so I really wanted to be seen as a good person. And I interpreted the places where I had social privilege in terms of class, race, ability, whatever, as like bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I was like, okay, well then, and this was all happening subconsciously, right? This is not like a conscious process that was happening. I was like, okay, well then how can I be good? And oh God, there's just so many layers there, because then it like interweaves with like kind of good girl programming, right? Of like, need to be a good white person, need to be a good, like
need to be lovable and accepted.
Ooh, yeah.
If you want to take it deeper.
Well, and that's interesting because when I personally, and I'm curious about your journey with that too, but when I went through a phase of stepping out of like the activist persona and stepping out of this like mainstream social justice culture that is very cult-like, I went through a big breakup at the time, and I started to really look at like lovability wounds. Like, can I really love myself for who I am, independent of what other people think of me, independent if I have a partner or if I don't? Like, can I really love myself? And so that's interesting, because as I stepped out of that culture, I really started to work that like lovability and acceptance stuff.
Yeah. And I think given the conversation, it's worth saying that you grew getting out of a 5-year relationship with a black man. I mean, talk about identity, like subconscious identity reflection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
That's relevant, I think.
Right. And then we kind of, in the context of that relationship, I'm not going to speak for him, but we definitely both sort of fell into social justice, like, culture together, got out of it, in our own ways. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
What was your experience with, or times in your life when you were like, I'm a good ally, and like,
oh man,
what was that like for you, and how did you come out of that?
Well, actually, I will talk about that, but I want to say something first. I spaced out for a second because I'm trying to balance the act of listening with the thoughts going on in my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, real.
So I'm going to retrieve one of those thoughts and kind of piggyback on something you said. Mm-hmm. You're saying like it's all happening subconsciously. And I'm like, how perfect to bring this to a podcast called Conscious Relating.
Yeah. Because
so much of it happens subconsciously. And it reminds me, I think you could definitely relate to this because you're a child of divorce. Sorry,
just a child of divorce over here. That's hilarious. Child of divorce.
Get a Girl Scout badge for that.
Orphaned child of divorce.
Oh my God, you lost both of your parents. Now we're going to tell the story so people aren't worried.
Neglect.
To emotional.
Good.
Without getting too deep into it, there's that common in your psyche, especially as a child, you take everything personally.
Right.
Oh,
yes.
my parents getting divorced, it must be my fault. In what way is it my fault?
Totally.
And it goes back to that desire to be loved and accepted. It's such a strong, like, just human need. It's like love and acceptance and connection.
Were you going to say more there? Because, I mean, from an energetic perspective, we live in a very fourth chakra culture, right? Because that's essentially what you're talking about there is like your energy gets stuck in your fourth chakra and it becomes all about me.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture that very much, I would say, validates that kind of energetic trend where it is all personal and you spend a lot of your time and energy like, getting stuck in that self-image space, whether it's like you're getting stuck there because you feel really grandiose about yourself or you feel really horrible about yourself.
Yeah. I can share about my experience of wanting the good ally cookie.
Yeah, talk about it.
And it's interesting too, it's all subconscious because I think consciously I wouldn't say, oh no, I'm not begging for cookies. I'm beyond that, but I was. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, you see it in hindsight. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it all goes back to the fourth chakra. It's like that desire for connection and acceptance. And some background about me is that I am fluent in Spanish. I really fell in love with Latin American culture. I think part of it was an escape, like, because like being a closeted trans man growing up in Missouri, getting to speak another language was like getting to immerse myself in a whole other world. And I didn't change genders necessarily, but it just felt like this cathartic escape. I could choose a new name for myself. I could create another persona. I created all these relationships in the Spanish speaking world through travels and through friends I went to school with. Anyways, I just, I've dated so many people who, like, not immigrants to the US, but like, well, I guess, yeah, immigrants, but people who were born in other countries and we would speak Spanish together. So anyways, I just have this big heart connection and I've spent a lot of time abroad, like 13 months in one trip, just whatever. I have a connection. And so when I was in undergrad in Missouri, I was in this random small rural town I didn't want to be in, but the cool thing was that there was all these international students. There was such a high ratio of international students. You hear so many different languages when you're walking around campus. And there was this contrast between the locals wearing literal camouflage. The school I went to had a really good like shooting team. It was very like country. And then there was just like a huge influx of like global culture at the same time. And my primary friend group on campus were the Latin Americans. There is like a Spaniard or two in that friend group, but literally like it was like gendered dorms. So it was like me and all the like Latin American girls in our dorm would like hang out, do everything together. And I literally spoke more Spanish on campus than I did English. Like all my friendships were in Spanish, even in the States. And so I just felt this like belonging or affinity. I was so well accepted in that group, especially because I did not feel like I belonged to the local rural culture, Right. And then when I left school, I was like, damn, like when I graduated from that experience, I moved back to St. Louis, my hometown, which is more liberal and stuff, but it was just so hard to make friends. I was like, how do you make friends with Americans? I don't even know anymore. I don't resonate as much. And of course, I was like, after I spent a year abroad in Latin America, and then I come home and I'm just like vibing with all the homies, and then I graduate and I'm like, how does all this other stuff work, And then I moved to Oakland, California, where there's like huge diversity, but particularly like Latin American population or Latin American immigrants. And so that for me was like, oh my God, finally, like a resonance, like people I can hang out with and vibe with. And man, that was not the energy I was received with. Like people have been so scarred by the systems that be patriarchy, white supremacy, whatever, capitalism. And there's such like a social justice, I guess, like consciousness in the Bay Area in general, but there's so much crunchiness and I think it's understandable. I'm not
Well, it's from trauma.
Saying they shouldn't be that way, but there's just, so much undigested trauma that then got like projected onto me. And then it felt like this invisible barrier of like, oh, you're white. And it's like, okay, well, that was never an issue before. Like, why is it an issue now? Like, I vibe, you know? And that was really hard for me. It was hard to like get through that. And I did date someone from Venezuela when I was there. And they lived in like a BIPOC house. And so I was like,
BIPOC.
You know, it was all other Spanish speaking people there. And I don't know, it was weird. There's like tension within the house because some people were like neutral about it. And some people were like, why are you letting this white person into our home? You know what I mean? And I could just feel that tension. And so I think that was part of my story specifically around like, okay, I feel like I belong in this community. Obviously, I'm an outsider who just resonates, you know, like I don't pretend like I am Latin American. I'm not, but I just fucking resonate with the culture, you know? And I've always felt countercultural, like my whole life. So, and then feeling like some acceptance, but like there's so much guard up. Like when I was living in Oakland, and I lived there for 4 years. And then feeling like rejected at the same time from like some of my partner's friends or housemates. That was hard. And I think it like on the one hand, I thought, oh, here I can finally belong again. And it wasn't so like black or white. Like it was actually like more complicated than when I was at school, and everyone was just like accepting me as one of them for some reason. I guess they weren't in that social justice mindset. They were just having an experience.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I think that goes back to what I was saying this morning and what we were talking about around how sometimes social justice culture like perpetuates this dehumanization.
Yeah.
And like you said, like that's all happening likely from trauma, right? Because to some degree, I mean, I can understand the like arc of if you've been living most of your life without having validated something painful and then you start to validate it, you know, it becomes really loud and you have like different kinds of boundaries, right? Where it's like when you're first starting to learn boundaries, right? Like your boundaries are like, get away from it. You know, they're like really loud and kind of like intense.
Yeah.
And that's sort of mellows out as you continue to like do the work. And so
that's real.
That could be a part of like what's going on there. But something that also stands out to me about what you shared and just this conversation in general is how like connection and belonging are such human needs. Like I know we were talking earlier about like fourth chakra culture and like taking everything so personally and like just wanting to be liked and accepted. And on one hand, that's very much like just like an unhelpful pattern that you kind of have to undo of being so fixated in your fourth chakra and wanting to be like approved of by everyone. But then on the other hand, there's very much like a physiological and emotional need of a human being where you need connection. Like that's actually like a need. And that stands out to me in terms of like your story of, and it makes sense that, and I wonder if you want to speak on this, but it makes sense that maybe then in Oakland, right, the kind of feeling like, oh, I'm not belonging now because I'm othered because I'm a different color, you know, not systemically, but in that particular localized culture moment would create like a lot of shame, right? Which is, I think, and I see, and I also, this was my personal experience, is like a lot of my own good allyship when I was like fixated, instead of like, how can I just relate to the human in front of me as human, how can I be a good ally, is fueled by a lot of shame and like that sort of self-loathing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of prove it energy.
Yes, totally.
And there's
prove my worth.
There's that hierarchy of like, you're white, you're below me. Like the system, your ancestors, etc., have fucked me over. They continue to fuck us over for generations. And you're the scum beneath my shoe. Prove it to me that you're worthy of my cookie, my ally cookie.
Right. Well, and this is where it becomes, right, where social justice culture that is dysfunctional and cult-like and traumatized takes the mainstream hierarchy that is like, you know, white as the best or whatever, or anything that has privilege is the best, and then flips it where it's the people who are the most oppressed by society become the like ringleaders of who gets like, you know, where the hierarchy in general is not helpful, whether it's like you're flipping. And I have so many like crazy, interesting stories about that, where I remember way back in the day when I was like first starting to kind of, I don't even know if I was starting to question it, but like I was very much steeped in the like activist self and culture. I did like a theater of the oppressed workshop, which is like a somatic based way to explore oppression, which I think is super helpful and cool. And I remember having the reflection, and I can't remember if the facilitator of the space tracked it as well, but like there's some sort of prompt where it then became apparent that like all of the like people with more privilege, race privilege, gender privilege in the space were kind of like shrinking to the people who had less. And just like how that's not what shared power looks like. And that's also not what healing and liberation looks like. And I think more and more people are waking up to that, but like, that's not what healing actually looks like. Is just reversing the hierarchy in a smaller context.
100%. With that prove it energy. So I'll speak for myself, but I notice this maybe that's what's happening for clients. I don't know, in session with me, where they're trying to prove to me like, look, I'm woke, I'm with it. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, you booked with me. That's enough. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to tap dance for me. You know what I mean?
It doesn't feel good for the person doing it or the person receiving it, unless like they have some kind of complex where they're wanting to be validated in that way. But
well, there's an example. This gay guy reached out to me and said, I'm dating my first trans guy ever. That's why I reached out to you. And I was like, okay, that feels relevant. Like, I'll take it. I'm trans. Okay, let's give you some more reference points, I guess. You know? But I've also had just like straight women, and it happens a lot with straight women, I'm realizing. Where they'll just make a fleeting comment that feels out of left field, and it's like to affirm my struggle as a trans person. And I'm just like, don't put me in the struggle box. I'm not struggling. I'm doing fine. You know, like, don't pity me or whatever. Don't fetishize my identity, because I want to relate to you as people. Like, you're coming to me for guidance, and I'm going to give you some. I don't need you like throwing a little pity cookie in there. I don't know. It's just weird. I think it's good intention, so I don't get like mad, but I'm just like, well, that feels disconnecting. You know what I mean? It's just like a microaggression experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it, that's interesting, because I'm trying to relate to that to like, times where maybe I've been that person who's been like giving that. And I'm kind of like, to me, when I recall that memory in my body, it's like, I just want to be good. You know, like I just want to belong. I just want to be good. And I want this person in front of me to feel okay. You know, and I want them to know I'm safe. But I totally hear you. It sounds very disempowering. And it's interesting, because the most healing thing is actually just to humanize one another, to not like continue with like the identity politics of like, I know exactly everything about you because you're this one identity, or, you know.
Right. Exactly. There's this quote by James Baldwin. I'm not going to quote it word for word, but the concept is like, when you've been bitten by a snake, when you walk into a room full of snakes, you're going to be on guard. Like, you don't know which snakes are going to bite and which ones aren't. But like, how are you supposed to know? Your nervous system responds the same way.
It's very true.
And so for me, trying to be like, please accept me as a good white person kind of a thing. Like, I want to be your friend. There's almost like, it's like, how can I signal to you right away? that you can trust me or you can relax around me. Like, how can we create the opportunity for connection even? Because if your nervous system's on edge, then like that's disconnecting. But I think that's where that kind of like, I don't know if that's, maybe there's some overlap with performative allyship. I think it's a big category of what falls under that. But I think there's something flashy about wanting to virtue signal and say, look, you can trust me. I'm an insider, you know, like an outsider that's an ally. I guess what that is. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Which to me, it's like, what does real healing look like? I mean, real healing looks like both people, say it's just like an interaction, right? Doing their work to heal the trauma that comes up when you encounter someone else. I mean, it's very like how you, in a relationship of any kind, of any style, of any gender, race, you know, any of the identity classifiers, two people come together in an intimate relationship and they're going to trigger the past in each other. Yeah. And it's like that happens with people that you're just walking by on the street, that you're in the class with. Like, it happens to varying degrees. And so it's like the work is, okay, let me be responsible for my nervous system and let you be responsible for your nervous system. Because I think the more that I sit with it, when I'm trying to be a good ally, right, or I'm like adopting that sort of behavior, it is a traumatized pattern in a way, because I'm actually trying to be responsible for your nervous system. Right. And actually, that's not my responsibility.
It's codependent.
Yeah, it's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to my nervous system and to make sure that I'm regulated no matter how you're perceiving me or not. Like, I'm not responsible for how you're perceiving me. Yeah. And so the like over responsibility, which very much tracks when I think about sort of me and where my psyche was at and things that I was working through when I was in that stage of my life where I was like very concerned about being seen as a good ally. Like, I was just taking on a lot of responsibility that wasn't mine.
Wow. Which I imagine is related to the guilt and the shame that you want to resolve within yourself, or you're trying to resolve it externally. Right. But as we're talking about it, I'm like looking at this theme of trust, and I'm like, well, that doesn't build trust. Right. Adrienne Marie Brown says, I love this concept by her of moving at the speed of trust. Right. And I'm like, yeah, just flashing your allyship cookie, flashing your allyship badge. That's not how you build trust. You build trust organically over time, not by signaling, you know? Right. And it's quite the opposite. When you're attempting to rush the process of trust, it actually feels disconnecting, which then is something the relationship needs to recover from.
Well, can you say that last bit again?
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about when I'm in session specifically, and like, I'm assuming as a baseline that anyone who books a session with me is not transphobic. So I'm not worried about that. I'm like, you came here, you know what you're getting into. And the moment someone tries to signal to me with some like completely out of left field comment that has nothing to do with the conversation, they clearly are looking to signal to me and get like a green light from me of like, oh, you're an ally. Like, you know what I mean? They're looking for a reaction from me, or they want me to understand they're an ally. But that feels so awkward and inauthentic and inorganic to me that it's like, it actually feels disconnecting. And then that disconnection is the opposite result of what that person was trying to do.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Well, it's like with any kind of traumatized behavior, it's like, oh, when I am, you know, hurting you because I'm hurt, what I'm really wanting underneath all that is connection. But is that behavior actually giving me the result? No, usually not.
Rarely. Yeah, I don't know if ever.
Rarely, if ever, you know.
Oh, we're both bleeding together. How intimate. Yeah. Feel so connected.
Yeah.
If you're kinky like that, maybe.
Yeah, but well, and I think there's something to talk about here in terms of the like levels of performance, because I think there's one level that like the mainstream social justice conversation talks about where they're like, oh yeah, like people were performing and like that's inauthentic and that's whatever. But then there's also the level of like just prescribing to those social justice hierarchies and to like any sort of behavior or thought or action or feeling that is like not actually authentic to you. And there's like a level of self-abandonment there in order to fit in with the group, which is why like social justice culture can become so culty, because it's like, oh, I want to be seen as a good person. And if I don't speak this exact way and I don't say my pronouns, like I'm not going to be seen as a good person. And it's just like, oh my God, like my own personal thing about that is just like, how did that get so far away from maybe the intention of it? Or maybe the intention of it wasn't actually like connection. Maybe it was more control, right? And so I think ultimately what led me to step out of the mission or orientation of even wanting to be a good ally was because I was like, well, I want to be just me, and I just want to be connected to myself, and I want to live my values, which is like respecting other people and, you know, acting in like a compassionate way as best as I can. And I don't want to have to like prescribe to all of these like rules. And then if I don't, like that not be seen, you know, it's like, I think there's a level of performance that isn't talked about so much, which is, I think, what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the underbelly. I mean, maybe that's the unconscious of anything in general, but that's the unconscious underbelly of the social justice culture.
Yeah.
Because on paper, I resonate with the concept of social justice.
Right.
Like it makes sense to me. That's what drew me into it. But then all the unhealed trauma, which I don't expect everyone to have their trauma healed 100%. That seems
we
unrealistic.
didn't when we were in it, you know.
No, and like to this day is like a constant work in progress, you know.
Totally.
So I don't expect it to be this perfect movement, but I think it's like you almost lose sight of the intention of the movement itself when that unconscious underbelly goes unexamined.
Right. And I think there are like a growing number of people who are dissatisfied with the disconnect there, where it's like, oh yeah, I have those same values, humanitarian values, but I don't resonate with this culture, or I don't resonate with this very like punishment energy here, or this shaming, or this cancel culture, or these tactics that don't seem to actually embody the values of like connection and love and like respect and sovereignty. You know, it's like, we're not alone. I think there's like a growing dissent and a growing like, you know, like awareness that it isn't always embodied. Yeah.
No, I would say the mainstream, at least in the Bay Area, mainstream social justice culture is 100% not embodied. Maybe in some ways, sure. But it's toxic in my opinion. You know, maybe that's controversial for some people, but the conditions were created in a way for me to walk on eggshells, which was something I already grew up doing because my dad was a violent alcoholic. And so here I am trying to heal from that, seeking connection. And then all my childhood trauma is being reinforced by the cultural conditions of my current environment that is quote unquote accepting, where me as a trans guy can find refuge in the social justice community. Why do you think I moved to Oakland? You know what I mean? I was still pre-hormones, pre-surgery before I moved to Oakland. And I thought, well, that seems like a safe haven. That seems like a good place to transition. And it was.
Yeah. Interesting. Safe, right? Because it's such an interesting word where it's like safe in some ways, safe and not in other ways. Safe to not... It's not safe to not agree. And I think that's where it
that's toxic.
So dysfunctional.
That's a cult.
Yeah.
When you get kicked out for disagreeing, or not even kicked out, when you get violently shamed and harassed and canceled, like that's a fucking cult.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, sorry, I'm already recovering from a few cults. Like I don't have space for another one. But I like social justice as an idea.
Right, or even the practice. I mean, the practice is
an integral practice.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in summary, no, I'm not interested in being a good ally necessarily, but I am interested in being a human and treating other people like humans. And maybe the message would be more accessible if like there was more embodiment of humanization instead of like a dehumanization behind everything.
Yeah, well, that's where spirituality is missing in the movement, in my opinion.
True.
Because like, for context, I was living at a Buddhist temple, like doing a mindful living residency for a year. And there was a few white people there. At one point I was the only white person, but there was like 12 of us, and there was a lot of diversity there in age and in race and gender and whatever. And the spirituality underneath it was like such an anchor for that community to navigate those social justice conversations, because we navigated a lot together. It was 2020. We navigated COVID together. It was intense.
Yeah.
When you have like 12 housemates during COVID in the Bay Area, it's like really intense.
Quite
a lot of negotiating and collaborating and intersectionality, whatever. But I think from the mainstream culture at large, spirituality is missing. I think even religion, to be honest with you, misses the spiritual piece of it, because it can be very hierarchical depending on the religion and the church. Yeah, it's more of the same. Those aren't spiritual concepts. Those are like very 3D fear and control concepts. Obey or you're going to a dark place. It's like, dude, that is not spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not real.
Yeah.
It's not real out there, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah, and so many people have been scarred by these organized religions who are not spiritual, and they're just perpetuating the trauma.
Repeppering.
That people become agnostic, or they become atheist, and I think that atheism is actually like hurting the movements. It gives it less integrity. You know what I mean? Because if I wasn't like committed to spiritual growth, like, and from my perspective, it's all about, okay, whatever is happening on Earth right now is all construct. It's not the real human nature. It's not even Earth's nature. Like, everything's out of balance. And so that's not the truth of how existence works. That's not spiritual. That's just like a kind of quirky experiment we all came into to see if we can like take ourselves out of the straitjacket, is how I feel. And so my whole spiritual practice is like, well, how can I peel off the layers of what's not true, like the social conditioning and the societal conditioning, the environmental conditioning, so I can get to truth, which is love, compassion, reciprocity, sovereignty, all the things that social justice aspires to.
Yeah.
But if you can't acknowledge how spiritual that movement is, it's not going to go very far, in my opinion.
It's a really good point. It's a really important point. Yeah. Yeah, and that is interesting how the more that I walked my spiritual path, that became like the compass. And not in some, because there's so many different ways or versions of how people walk the spiritual path. I mean, you can walk it just in the same way that you can practice humanitarian values from a very disembodied place. You can walk a spiritual path from a very disembodied place. But ultimately, spirituality hopefully will guide you more into your body, more into who you are, more into being just a human and respecting other humans because you love and care about yourself.
Yeah. I think that's the thesis of this conversation or even the talk we had when we were walking earlier.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's not create these fake categories or these social constructs. Let's like eliminate, like, can you get deeper beneath the social construct? What is there? There's human connection, human relationship. And the whole walking on eggshells. Can I prove to you that I'm worthy of your whatever, your acceptance and your love?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's inherently disconnecting. I want to share one more thing. Do you have space for that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I think about, I lived 25 years as a woman and severely traumatized by men, like in so many ways, so many incidents, physical, emotional, sexual, all of it, just like scarred as hell.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like 10 times more emotional available for relationships with men now that I've done like so much healing around it.
True.
Ooh, but if any guy would try to connect with me, like from an intimate, vulnerable place, like an authentic relating kind of place, I just wasn't available for it, and it wasn't their fault. They could have been the nicest guy in the world, could have been Jesus Christ himself, and I would have been like, no, bro, you got a penis, back the fuck up. You know, like,
yeah, no, that's real.
I need some space. Like, I'm hurt, and I need to lick my wounds, you know?
Right.
And I think that's understandable, but being on the other end of that equation helps me realize, like, okay, the lesson there is not to seek something where it's not available. And that practice of acceptance is a spiritual practice. Like, can you let go? Can you release attachment to needing to be a good white person? And so I need to get at least 3 black friends, at least 2 Latino. You know what I mean? It's like, you're like trying to, I don't know, like signal in some ways. It's like, well, how can I, whatever,
not lose belonging in this cult? Yeah.
Yeah. How can I signal, I guess? Yeah. What you're saying.
Yeah.
But maybe the question is like, can you find someone who's actually just more available for connection? Maybe they have their own trauma, maybe they have less trauma, but regardless of how they've ended up there, what is their emotional availability for a relationship, whether it's friendship or something more? Yeah. And does it match where you're at? 'Cause if it doesn't, then you need to bark up a different tree. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's so relatable to relationships in general. And like, yeah, again, I just kind of keep coming back to the, like, regardless of what type of relationship is, the relationship, like, foundations always hold true. Like, do both people have a practice of self-care and tending to their own trauma so that they can reach across the divide of pain and, you know, stuff from the past that gets triggered and stuff even that comes up like in the present between each other, and like work through that and reach for one another and actually like establish trust and safety, you know, amidst all of this. I mean, I think that the work of, you know, quote unquote social justice or collective healing is the work of relationship. And so you need like relationship skills. And the last thing I'll say too is what you're talking about, like with men, right? It is such a spiritual concept of like forgiveness. And a lot of people have this idea about forgiveness, that like forgiveness is like, oh, you forgive the person who hurt you, and like that just, you gotta just forgive them, you know. And it's just like,
just
I don't
let
know.
it go.
Yeah, like I don't know. People think that it just happens or something.
No.
Like, and it's like, no, forgiveness is actually like a deeply like slow journey a lot of the time. And the first step is always actually just giving yourself space to be where you are, which means maybe you don't want to talk to someone for a whole year, right? It's like giving yourself space. And then from that place, you can give the other person space, which that is what forgiveness is the like energy of space. Like I have space to be where I am, you have space to be where you are. And there can then be forgiveness, right?
Yes. And on the flip side of that, do you have space to keep going?
Yeah, probably like maybe a few more minutes.
Okay.
So let's like start to wrap it up.
On the flip side of that, I'm remembering this. I had like a 6-month romantic relationship with someone from South Asia, born in the US, but parents are from South Asia. And I was just their punching bag for all the all the unhealed trauma. And it's like the opposite of the giving it space. It's like they were taking out all their past pains or their grievances with the systems, which I think is like valid to have that and to have the trauma, and the systems are fucked up. Of
course, yeah.
But then it's like I became the punching bag, and I played that role in my family as well. And so I just slipped into that role so easily with this person. And it's a match for the white guilt and the white shame. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, well,
I deserve this.
Yeah, I guess I need to metabolize this on behalf of my ancestors. So I'll let you punch me in the face verbally or emotionally. Right. I'm covered in blood, and I'm just here loving you, showing up in relationship imperfectly, but like, you know. And then I reached a point where it was like the 6-month point where I was like, I can't take this anymore. This is so stressful. My body, like I don't feel safe around this person. They're like so aggressive towards me. Yeah. And I was like, I can't do this. Broke up, and then I think like a year later, word came back to me that this person is telling people I'm racist. And I'm just like, cool. The final blow. That's like the reverse hierarchy.
It's the easy
it's like,
blow.
Oh, you broke up with me.
Yeah.
And like, you didn't want to continue being my punching bag.
Yeah.
You know, like, how dare you walk away from me, you white piece of shit. You should be licking my boots.
Yeah.
But it was like, I outgrew the like, I'm like, actually, I don't deserve this, you know, like.
Right. Well, I did that to men, like men that I've dated, like 100%, like white, straight, like men, you know, where I like punched them and I was like, you know, like
verbally, emotionally.
Yes, verbally. Verbally and emotionally. Yes. To clarify. And then in hindsight was like, oh shit, you know, like, oh yeah. I mean,
because you're wielding that power dynamic. There's pain of like, you broke up with me. It's like the final blow.
Well, and it's the power of like, when you have been oppressed or harmed or traumatized by the unjust power systems that we live amidst, like, you know, supremacies of any kind, it's like, you can then, become not like the oppressor, but you become the one then who does harm when you don't metabolize that pain, or you're trying to metabolize it through, you know, like, you know, your intimate relationship without a lot of like, relationship skills to hold that well. Yeah. I mean, like I totally did that like with men when I was like in my early 20s, you know, and I went back and like told some of those men that I was dating back then, I was like, you know what? I'm sorry. And it's not because like necessarily they like, you know, didn't do harmful things or that they didn't have unconsciousnesses or like, but I was like, you know, that's not how I want to, because I want to live according to my values, right? Like that's not how I want to treat anyone.
Yeah. And it takes, from my perspective, spiritual maturity, which is why I think you and I resonate deeply, is because we really match each other in the amount of shadow work we've done, which I think is inherently spiritual. It's like the spiritual growth, the spiritual maturity. Can you release the pain, feel it, metabolize it? You don't have to fully heal from it. Take your time with it. But if you're not like identifying with the pain or attaching it or weaponizing it against people, you know, because that's not the healing that you need or the world needs.
And whose pain is that? Really? Actually.
Plug for yourself.
Whose pain is that? Is that all yours? Yeah, totally. All right, let's wrap up.
Yeah. Wait, can I say one more thing briefly?
Yes, and then let's wrap up.
Yeah, before we say goodbye, it feels important for me to name that I do not want to be put on the top of a hierarchy. I used to milk that. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm trans. I'm so lucky because now I can have an in with the other marginalized communities. And it's like a ticket for acceptance for some people, not for everyone.
I mean, that's why I identified as being non-binary.
But that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's another episode, y'all.
We'll get there, yeah. We talk about that all the time. Fēnix and I both used to be non-binary. LOL. And now I'm like trans man and you're just like a woman.
You're just a woman. Just a woman.
Yeah.
A woman. Yeah.
Yeah. But it feels important to me. And I think some of that awkwardness I feel in the sessions with clients is when people bring up like, oh, and by the way, I know how oppressed you are. I'm like, don't put me on a fucking hierarchy. You know what I mean? It's weird. It feels disconnecting. If I wanted to be on a pedestal, I would have been a therapist. The whole point of coaching is as non-hierarchical, you know? And it's just weird when people like project that onto you. And I'm just not, I don't enjoy it. I find it very disconnecting. I just want to be equal playing field.
Yeah. So folks, maybe don't try.
Stop trying so hard.
Or maybe you don't need to be an ally. You don't need to obsess over being an ally to other people. Just be good to yourself, be good to other people.
Yeah.
End of stories.
And that's where spiritual humility, spiritual growth, spiritual maturity comes from. You drop the allyship framework altogether and you just say, how can I be a good person on planet Earth?
Yes.
Because Lord knows we need it more than ever right now.
We need it.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you want to go deeper, you can check out the course that we are hosting together this August. It's called The Conscious Couple. It's for spiritual couples who want to continue to heal, grow, and deepen intimacy together by unlearning all the dysfunction you inherited from your family, from the environment. It's a pretty dysfunctional world out there. So you could think of it as a 4-month-long date. It's a lot of structure to help you not only make sure like you're not falling into those unconscious traps that are very common in this culture, but also to make sure that you can really change your patterns in a sustainable and consistent way, which is essentially like an insurance policy for your relationship. Ideally, your relationship gets better over time, not worse, which is countercultural, but that's what our course is all about. Do you want to share about what you're offering?
Sure. So my main offering right now is the Ostara Psychic Collective, and it's a grounded, trauma-informed space for empathic women to learn how to develop and trust their intuition. And so if that speaks to you, you can check out my website, fenixgrace.com. It's FENIX grace.com.
And if you want more individualized support in your relationship, doing shadow work, I also do couples coaching. So you can go to consciousrelating.org, click on the couples, I think it's couples sessions is what it says. But you can book a free call and get a feel for if we're a good fit and if that's the kind of support that you need right now.
Yeah.